You know the feeling, right? You buy the tiny little gloves, you pick out the most colorful seed packets, and for the first 10 minutes your kids are absolutely hooked. But then, almost like clockwork, the magic just totally fades. They wander off, or, even worse, they start trampling the very seedlings you literally just planted together. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into a really fascinating, incredibly practical 10-year gardening secret that absolutely flips the script on how we garden with children.
It's seriously the ultimate frustration for any garden-loving parent. Why do kids lose interest so fast? Well, most of us just naturally assume the problem is the plants. We think, maybe the seeds are taking way too long to sprout, or we didn't pick exciting enough vegetables. But a mom of two named Tina, who has actually been gardening with her kids for over a decade, discovered a completely different secret. Through years of trial and error, she realized that our whole approach to getting kids into the dirt is, well, entirely backwards.
And that brings us to Tina's biggest realization. She says, kids don't fall in love with gardening because of plants. They fall in love with it because of how the space feels. I mean, talk about a huge paradigm shift. As adults, we're super goal-oriented in the garden, right? We're dreaming of the harvest. But children, they're entirely experiential. If the physical setup doesn't feel right to their developing bodies, their curiosity is going to fade instantly, no matter what you're trying to grow.
So, let's talk about the secret of space. As adults, we rely heavily on verbal boundaries. We point at a patch of dirt and say, hey, don't step there, or watch out for those tiny green shoots. But here's the thing. Kids do not naturally process verbal warnings in a physical space. Instead, they intuitively respond to what they can see, what they can touch, and what they physically have to navigate around. To a child, a boundary needs to be physical, not just spoken.
Let's look at how this actually plays out. If you have a ground-level garden, it basically just blends right into the rest of the yard. To a kid, it's just another piece of the lawn, which practically invites them to run right through it. But contrast that with a raised garden bed. A raised bed creates a firm, undeniable physical boundary. It quietly teaches a child exactly where the garden begins and the play area ends without you having to constantly nag them. They just naturally stop running through the space and start moving around it.
Knowing that a raised bed is definitely the way to go, we arrive at the absolute biggest game changer from Tina's 10 years of experience. It isn't the building material, it's not the layout, or even the type of soil. The single most important decision for a kid-friendly garden is the actual height of the bed. Height literally changes everything. It dictates how they interact with the space, if they feel invited, and honestly, whether your plants will even survive their help.
To really get this, let's look at the extremes. If a raised bed is too low, it barely registers as a boundary at all. It basically just becomes a giant, very inviting sandbox, accidentally prompting kids to step right into the soil, completely unaware they're crushing your plants. On the flip side, if the bed is way too high, it feels completely out of reach. If they can't comfortably see over the edge, they just disengage. It becomes this off-limits adult space that they're just watching, rather than actually experiencing.
So the sweet spot is perfectly captured in Tina's golden rule for family gardening. She says, make it easy to reach, but not easy to step into. It's brilliant. It's this perfect balance that solves the safety of your plants and the engagement of your kids all at the exact same time. Once you hit this sweet spot, everything else becomes infinitely easier. You aren't managing their behavior anymore. The physical structure of the garden is literally doing the managing for you.
Okay, so how do we actually find that perfect sweet spot? Well, Tina developed a highly practical age-by-age blueprint to help you design the perfect height. Because let's face it, a curious 3-year-old navigates the world very differently than a 10-year-old. The height of the bed really needs to match their developmental stage. So let's start by looking at how to set things up for the youngest, most curious members of the family.
For the youngest age group, the absolute ideal raised bed height is right between 12 to 18 inches tall. At this height, the bed feels incredibly accessible to a small child, but it still stands up just enough from the grass to clearly signal, hey, this dirt is different from the dirt you play in.
We like to call ages 3 to 5 the exploration phase. Toddlers experience the world completely through movement. They don't separate play from structure. They want to sit, lean, climb, the whole shebang. So that 12 to 18-inch height lets them comfortably reach in with their hands without mistaking the soil for a stepping stone. Curiosity just shows up naturally the second they realize they can reach in and touch things safely on their own.
Now, as your kids grow, their relationship with the garden is going to change, and so should the space. For the next age group, the ideal height moves up to 18 to 24 inches. This taller height keeps the plants right within comfortable reach for slightly taller bodies, while firmly encouraging them to stay safely on the outside of the box.
This height is absolutely tailored for ages 6 to 10. During these years, kids are developing much better coordination. They finally understand cause and effect, and they're interacting with the world using just their hands rather than throwing their whole bodies into it. Psychologically, this is kind of that magical stage where they start taking real ownership. They'll check plants independently, they'll water without being asked, and they take immense pride in seeing the results of their own work.
Finally, we reach the tallest recommended height for a family garden, which is 24 to 32 inches. And honestly, this height is fantastic because it actually aligns perfectly with a comfortable working height for adults too. That means no more bending over and hurting your back, while it still remains super accessible for older kids.
For ages 10 and up, the dynamic of gardening just completely transforms. Preteens are coordinated, they can handle longer tasks, and the garden stops being about you teaching or managing them. Instead, it becomes a truly shared experience. At 24 to 32 inches, you are comfortably working side by side. The garden stays cleaner, it's more organized, and the whole activity just feels deeply natural and collaborative.
Now, I know what some of you are thinking. I have a toddler and a preteen. There's no way I'm building 3 different garden beds. Don't worry. Here is a brilliant mom hack from Tina for families who just want a simple one-bed setup. Go ahead and choose the tallest height, 24 to 32 inches. It saves adult backs and is the best long-term option. Then simply add a sturdy step stool for the younger kids. Divide the bed into little personal sections, and you've got a garden that works beautifully for the entire family.
Okay, so you've got the physical boundaries set, and the height is perfectly dialed in. The foundation is ready, but what should you actually plant to act as the catalyst for their excitement? The structure of the bed keeps them there safely, for sure, but picking the right plants is what's going to keep them hooked and eager to return day after day. The absolute best plants for kids are the ones that provide incredibly quick, visible results. We highly recommend lettuce, strawberries, and herbs. Why? Because let's be real. Patience is not exactly a virtue most children possess. Lettuce grows so fast it provides almost daily visual changes. Strawberries offer a bright, sweet reward that they can hunt for like a treasure. And herbs, they provide super high sensory interaction. They can rub the leaves and instantly smell mint or basil right on their fingers.
To sum up the ultimate kid-friendly gardening strategy, it's really just 3 simple steps. First, give them a personal section. Even a tiny corner of their own makes them feel so responsible. Second, choose fast-growing plants so they can see the magic of nature happening quickly. And third, focus heavily on sensory exploration. Let them touch the fuzzy leaves, smell the aromatic herbs, and taste the strawberries fresh off the vine. It completely turns a chore into a vibrant sensory playground.
As we look back on Tina's amazing 10-year journey, it's really important to sort of soften our focus for a second and look at the real emotional payoff here. Because all of this, the raised beds, the specific heights, the careful plant selection, actually scratch that. It isn't really about growing the biggest tomatoes on the block at all. It's entirely about setting the stage for connection.
Tina shared this incredibly poignant realization that I think every single parent needs to hear. She said, "Kids don't remember perfect gardens. They remember how it felt to be included." Your garden absolutely doesn't need to be perfectly weeded. The rows don't need to be perfectly straight. The true purpose of building all this structure is simply to create a safe, inviting space where small, beautiful moments can just happen naturally. It's about those quiet mornings watering plants in your pajamas and the pure joy of finding that first red strawberry together.
Raised garden beds, when you design them the right way, do so much more than just grow plants. They create structure, they create safety, and they provide this amazing backdrop for memories that are going to stay with your kids long after the garden itself changes. And it really all starts with something as surprisingly simple as the height of the soil. So I'll leave you with this to think about today. What small, unforgettable moment are you going to create with your kids once you finally get the height right?